Hey Solo! So did some of you listen with horror in the episode that came out on Monday thinking, oh, she's not talking about the most important thing, the most important category of restaurant when you're thinking about dining solo at Disney World, which is bars and lounges. Hey, don't worry, I got you. I know how important bar and lounges are as a category of eating and drinking for solos at Disney World, and that's why I wanted to make a bonus episode just about that. Hi everyone, it's Samantha and welcome to Solo Magic, the podcast about the magic of going to Disney World solo. In today's bonus episode, I'm just going to talk about bars and lounges and why it is a great option when you're traveling solo to be able to kind of indulge a little bit, but maybe without the formality or the organization of having to make reservations and sit in a formal dining room. So let's get into it. Now, going to bars and lounges is not like an idea that I invented myself by any means. I definitely would see bloggers talk about it, and there were places that I wanted to go check out. But then also there were times where I couldn't get a reservation somewhere and thought to myself, well, why don't I just go and see if I can get a table? And when I couldn't get a table, I could get a spot in the lounge, and then bingo bango, I'm eating at a fancy restaurant without the reservation and without the formality of a formal dining room. And this is why bars and lounges are actually a really, really great option for solos traveling to Disney World. Solos, but also just adults. Even if you are traveling, as a couple or as a group of friends or whatever, bars and lounges are a really great option for adults, solos, going to Disney World and having something a little bit more elevated. Yeah, I'm thinking about adults, not just solo adults, because a friend of mine was saying that okay, when I just said that in my head, I'm thinking of the sound meme that's I have friends, I definitely have friends, like that. Yeah, I mean, I have friends. I definitely have friends. I'm just not going to wait for them in order to have a really fun vacation. So anyway, a friend of mine was saying oh, I've never really thought about going to Disney World solo, but when I was listening to the first couple episodes of your podcast, I was thinking, oh, I could do some of these things with my husband. And so anyway, bars and lounges are a good option for solos, but also if you're traveling with partners or friends. Anyway, regardless. Okay, what do I mean when I talk about bars and lounges? Well, perhaps it's fairly obvious. And I just want to remind you, I don't drink alcohol. I'm not interested in going to a bar just to have fancy alcoholic drinks. If that's what you do, that's cool, no problem. But I'm saying that the idea that you're going to go and drink a lot of alcohol is not a prerequisite for going to a bar or a lounge at Disney World. So what is a lounge at Disney World? Well, there are a few kind of high-end restaurants that have a small bar attached, and that bar has more comfortable lounge seating. In the bar lounge, you can order from the menu that they have there, both bar drinks, but also they have food. A lot of times those are appetizers. Sometimes they are appetizers that are different than the appetizers in the main dining room. But also, and here's the thing, you can also order from the menu in the main dining room. It's the same kitchen. It's the same point of sale system. It is not difficult at all. So you can go to a lounge and you can get a drink if you want, get an appetizer if you want, but you can also just get a full meal. And that's pretty awesome because with the lounges, except for one exception, which is Space 2020, and I'll just come back to that in a second, is walk up. Walk up, first come, first serve. And I have usually gone, because I'm so exhausted, that I'll go to a restaurant at 5 o'clock, right where it opens, to see if they have a spot that I could sit at. And I personally don't have an issue with eating alone. I don't mind sitting at a table in a dining room. But when you're sitting in a lounge too, in a big comfy chair, it's oh God, let me just sit down and relax. I feel your body has to be a little bit more straight and formal when you're in a dining room. But in the lounge, you can kind of relax and have a really delicious meal and have the type of high-end food that you would get at that restaurant. So I'm thinking one time of this dinner that I had at a lounge. I really wanted to go to the Enchanted Rose, which is a bar slash lounge that's at the Grand Floridian. It's not connected to a restaurant the way a lot of the other lounges are. It stands on its own, and it's also gets very, very, very busy. So I went like an hour, maybe 2 hours after it opened, and there was only one seat left, and I was sat there, which was fine, but I just found it really, really noisy, like intensely noisy. I couldn't stand it. So I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, I can't stay. Then I went to the Citricos Lounge. So Citricos is one of the high-end restaurants at the Grand Floridian. It's literally next door to the Enchanted Rose. Like it's in on the same like level of the Grand Floridian, and the lounge was completely empty. So and much quieter. So I took a seat there, and I said to the waiter, like, there was something on the menu at the Enchanted Rose that I wanted that isn't on this menu. Could I have that instead? And he was like, okay, let me look into it. He never told me what happened. He just brought me the food, which was delicious. So I had a beautiful appetizer from the Enchanted Rose while sitting in the Citricos Lounge. And I also then ordered the most delicious vegetarian pasta from the Citricos main dining room that I also ate in the lounge. And all of this without having to wait at all. It was a delicious meal. I enjoyed myself thoroughly. And then at the end, got up, left. I mean, obviously I paid, but I'm just saying it was like not this kind of formal experience, which was perfect for me as a solo traveler. Another time I went to the Dahlia Lounge at the Coronado Springs Tower, and because it is Spanish themed, there was a lot of like tapas appetizer options, and I ordered a whole bunch of different tapas, and I had a delicious dinner with just that. So the lounges provide this really great option. And some of the bars do as well that are just bars. So there is just a bar at the Coronado Springs Resort, as well as the lounge, as well as a restaurant. And at the Polynesian, there is a secret bar called Trader Sam's that, yeah, I mean, you can ask anyone, but they don't like promote it because it is supposed to be kind of secret, and it's a tiki bar, and it's very cool, and it really just serves like cool tiki drinks, alcoholic and non-alcoholic. But because it got so popular, they also opened up a bit of a dining room outside that is definitely not as secret, but again, a really wonderful option. And when you are by yourself, when you're not with kids, it's really great to be able to explore these different options. So look into the lounges and look into the bars as places to eat and drink. And, in the last episode, I said that you should choose restaurants based on the research that you do, thinking about your food preferences, your price preferences, but also try something new. And that's what's really great about the lounges. Like all of this kind of new interesting food that I've tried has often been at the lounges because they're connected to the fancier restaurants. Their menu is a little bit more upscale, a little bit more exploratory sometimes, and it's been a really, really great experience. Now, I mentioned that you don't need a reservation at the lounges, and you don't. But Space 2020, which is a new-ish restaurant at Epcot, does have a lounge, and it became so popular that they have a reservation system for the lounge. So that's the only one that you really need a reservation for. All of the others are walk-up only, and my experience is if you go right at the beginning of the meal time, you will get a table. I'm trying to quickly think about my experiences with lounges or being in restaurants and looking at lounges and thinking about how busy they get. If you go at if you go during one of the marathon weekends where there's a lot of adults there and you go prime dinner time, you probably will have difficulties, but mainly you're okay. Nomad Lounge, though, is another exception. So Nomad Lounge is the lounge that's connected to the Tiffin's restaurant at Animal Kingdom, and that is a very, very, very popular lounge. There's outdoor seating, there's indoor seating, and because it has a little bit more of an upscale flair for the restaurant, for the menu items, and because it has the nice outdoor patio, or maybe it's just because I like the outdoor patio. It often has a very, very long waiting list. But I doubt you'll have to wait at like the Yachtsman Steakhouse lounge or the lounge that's attached to the Boatwright restaurant at Port Orleans Riverside. Like, there's a lot of really great options. And I mentioned in the last episode that I know sometimes people are a little intimidated eating by yourself, especially in a formal dining room. And I get that. I totally see why that's a thing. Like, definitely try to like work through that because it's not as big of a deal as you think. Nobody is really like looking at you and judging. Like, just own it, do you. However, eating in a lounge is a little less intimidating because it isn't in a formal dining room. And if you are getting, apprehensive about eating alone in a fancy place, but you're kind of getting used to the idea of doing that, then definitely check out the lounges because the intimidation factor goes down exponentially because it being a much smaller, chill space. So, which is your favorite lounge if you have been to a lounge as a solo traveler? Where is your must go? Where do you want everybody to go? And by everybody, I mean as long as you get a seat first. Because, yes, like all these wonderful recommendations, but like make sure that I can eat where I want to eat first. Although when you're going solo, like we can share a table. That's cool. You can be like, hey, Samantha, can I share your table? So please let me know on Instagram what your favorite lounge is. Just a reminder, my Instagram account is Disney_solo_magic. The link is in the bio. And please, please, please subscribe and rate this podcast so other people can be aware of it. Make sure you share it to all your traveling friends as well. And let's see this community of solo travelers grow. And like I have said before, it would be wonderful to have some guest speakers on the podcast so that you can share your experiences eating solo, going to a lounge, or even just like trying to figure out what the best restaurant is for you when you're by yourself and you only have to make decisions for yourself, which to me sounds wonderful. But I also know that like for a lot of people, it sounds wonderful in theory, but in practice, it can be like, oh my God, I've never actually made a decision like that before. Where do I even start? So it'd be so great to talk with you about, that whole journey of figuring out where you like to eat. Coming up next week, I'm going to start a series where I'm going to talk about all the individual parks plus Disney Springs and talk a little bit about the different elements that you as a solo person should think about, consider, so that when you're planning your day, you aren't just replicating a day that you might do with your family, but are able to really pull out some interesting elements on your own. Because again, I don't want to make recommendations for you. You need to recommend stuff for yourself. That's the whole point of going solo. But identifying some broad themes to keep in mind that help you make decisions with is kind of like the element of this podcast that I'm really hoping suits your needs. All right, everyone, until next week, I'll talk to you then.